Uncut Magazine's 500 Greatest Albums of Decades. This is number 494. Hi, welcome to Garage Geek. So I'm continuing this, what seems like never-ending journey into these decades. There are 500, and I'm only on number 494 going this way. It seems like it's going to take me forever. But you know what? It doesn't matter because I'm listening to these albums and I'm having fun and I'm enjoying them. Originally, I wanted to do one number per week, but that's not happening. I end up taking a couple weeks listening to them, and that's fine with me. Some of these albums really grow on me. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the 1960s.
Look out, there's a monster coming. Look out, there's a monster coming. Look out, there's a monster coming. Look out, there's a monster coming.
From the 1960s, we have the album at 494, and that one is the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band, entitled Gorilla. Now, this was the first of these 5 that I listened to. I have to say, initially, I was not liking this album, and there was a couple reasons why. One, it seemed to be satiring or making fun of a musical genre that I like. Researching them later, I found out that they're art school students, and they are or art music school students. They were kind of like a jazz satire band. And it seems like they would mimic songs from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, dance hall, jazz, vocal, big band. And initially, I didn't like the fact that they were making fun of these genres, which I really appreciate.
Count Basie Orchestra on Triangle. Thank you.
But as I was listening to this, I really started to understand how good they were and how accomplished they are, how well they actually satire these songs. They almost sound real.
Death cab for Cutie. Death cab for Cutie. Someone's gonna make you pay your fare.
So as you're listening to this album, you're going to get a lot of variety, but all within those time frames. You're going to have different personas, different types of singing. Some of the funniest is like the bored elite or effete. The songs really do grow on you. And whereas initially I started out kind of annoyed with this album, I really, really grew to love it.
It was The Sound of Music.
If you've never heard this album, I think you're in for a treat. It might take a few listens for it to grow on you, but it's really a lot of fun.
All the king's horses, all the king's men couldn't put our 2 hearts together again.
The 1970s, when I first saw that I would have to listen to an album by Aretha Franklin, I was like, ugh, not another one. I like Aretha, but for her, a little bit goes a long way. So I started listening to this album, and again, I was like, okay, but this one also really grew on me. This album is fantastic.
Because you got to keep us side by side, yeah. Oh, be all mine. I am a fool for you, baby.
This album came out in 1972, and it's got a lot of cover songs. It's very, very gospel influenced. And I think that might be why I really appreciated this album. Her singing is phenomenal, and her backup singers add so much to this album. There are a couple songs on this album that once you know them, they will be stuck in your head. They are that good.
Life has been so wonderful. I don't want to stop now. Laid it on me so good, my darling.
Not every song on this album is amazing. A lot of them are just really good, but that's good enough. Like, for example, her covers of the Beatles songs, they're very different. Are they necessary? No, but they're so different. They're gospel tinged. They're just a lot of fun to listen to, especially so that you could hear her vocal range. This album is a real keeper, and it's shocking because I don't have this one in my collection, and I'm definitely going to remedy that. The 1980s is going to be Def Leppard's album Hysteria from 1987. Now, I'm going to have to admit that by the time this album came out, I was over Def Leppard. I liked Def Leppard when I was young. I certainly loved the Pyromania album and all the videos on MTV. They were huge. And this album, I think, is the one that came out after the accident with the drummer. And I always felt that was so cool that they kept the drummer in the band and they built equipment around his handicap. I mean, any band that does that, you've just got to love them. However, it is a Def Leppard album, and so they're going to be singing about scoring chicks and, that kind of topic, which is, pretty juvenile. If you put on the first half of this album, it's going to be hit after hit after hit. So many of these songs I already knew. For example, Pour Some Sugar on Me, which is a song that I do not like much at all. But within the context of the album, I was starting to appreciate it more.
Listen, red light, yellow light, green light, go. Crazy little woman in a one-man show. Mirror queen, mannequin, rhythm of her love. Sweet dreams, Saccharine, Lucetta.
The second half of the album isn't so hit heavy, and it's also very good. But when you put this on, you're just going to notice song after song after song that you know. You're going to be rocking to it. You're not going to be rocking as heavy as, for example, if you're listening to Metallica. And there are a lot of ballad-tinged songs for a hard rock album. But I think a lot of groups were moving in that direction. And they would at least put a couple ballads on their albums because those often would become huge hits. Overall, I would say that this is a fun, but for me, forgettable album. This is not an album that I would run out and buy now that I've listened to it multiple times. If I found it cheap, I would buy it. So I guess, I would give this maybe a 3 out of 5. Next, we come to the 1990s. U2 is a band that everybody has to know. But 1993's Zooropa was, I believe, either with pop or Zooropa, they just went into a totally different direction. Maybe they did it first on pop. I'm not sure about that. So for a U2 album, I would say that this is not their best, but it is a U2 album, and it is very, very good. It is enjoyable, danceable pop, and it's a lot of fun. I've heard the song Lemon so many times, and I never knew what they were singing. I kind of thought they were singing She Sucks Lemons, but I guess the lyrics are She Wears Lemons? Whatever. It's a pop song. but just like most of the songs on this album, they're very catchy. I would also give this album about a 3 out of 5.
And sons turn their fathers in. I stopped outside a church house where the citizens like to sit. They say they want the kingdom, but they don't want God in it.
The 2000s. Now for the 2000s, we have 2001's Ladytron's album 604. This is another album that I'd never heard of, but I really enjoyed this album. This has a lot of influences. I wouldn't want to name them all, but you can hear some of the clips. It's electronic, but it's mostly electronic, and it is a lot of fun, very catchy. I would recommend this if you're into electronic and dance. I would recommend this more than the YouTube album. The YouTube album. I keep calling YouTube. I would recommend this album more than the U2 album if you wanted to hear something danceable.
You don't have to spend, you just have to pretend.
This album may take a couple of listens for you to warm up to, but once you have, you're going to be bopping along to the beats and appreciating the vocals on this album.
This goes out for me, this goes out for you, this goes out and it might be true. This goes out for me, this goes out for you, this goes out, oh, be nice.
So now it's time for ranking. Which one was the best? The best of these 5 albums was Aretha Franklin's album, Young, Gifted, and Black. Boy, was I surprised at this album in a very pleasant way. I wasn't expecting it to be so damn good. At number 4, I'm going to give the 1960s album, Gorilla, by the Bonzo, I gotta look it up. The Bonzo Dog Band. Let me see. The Bonzo Dog Doo-Dah Band. This was also a very pleasant surprise, and it's a very enjoyable album that I really recommend that if you've never heard this album before, you should give it a try. It's a lot of fun. Number 3 is going to be the 2000s Ladytron album, 604. Let me make sure I got that number correct. Yeah, Ladytron's 604. Enjoyable album. Now, at the bottom 2 slots, we have a tie. Def Leppard and U2. I enjoyed both of these albums, but for me, they're nothing to go screaming home about. Sorry, I know there are a lot of rabid U2 fans and rabid Def Leppard fans. The other albums are just better, and I believe that both bands have better albums in their catalogs. Okay, I want to thank you for listening to my countdown of these albums, ranked 494 in their decades. And I know I did this quickly because I need to just move on and get to 493. If you're enjoying hearing me talk very vaguely about a bunch of albums, please leave your comments in the comment section. And if you disagree with anything I said, I don't mind. I'm just one person, and if you love U2 and you think that is the greatest album ever produced, I'm not going to fault you. This is just my opinion. I want to thank all of you for the support.